and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on the international community to stop India from its reckless and militarist agenda. In a series of tweets, Khan said the Indian media has also revealed its government's dirty nexus that is pushing the region to the brink of a conflict. He said Prime Minister Modi's government continues to turn India into a rogue state. The world has called for immediate release of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, who was detained on arrival in Moscow from Germany. European Council President Charles Michel said the detainment of Navalny is unacceptable, while the U.S. said the perpetrators of the attack on his life must be held accountable. Moscow accuses Navalny of breaching the terms of a suspended prison sentence for fraud and can be jailed for up to 3.5 years. Rescuers say 12 miners trapped underground after an explosion in a Chinese gold mine a week ago are still alive. State media said the workers managed to send a note to rescuers 7 days after the accident in eastern Shandong province. The fate of 10 others missing miners is still unclear. The number of global coronavirus infections has crossed 95 million, with over 2 million deaths. The U.S.'s COVID-19 death tally is approaching 400,000, while its caseload is nearing 24 million. Pakistan has registered over 1,900 new cases and 46 fatalities overnight as the death toll approaches 11,000. And in football, Athletic Bilbao beat Barcelona 3-2 in the final to lift the Spanish Super Cup. Lionel Messi was sent off with a red card for the first time in his Barcelona career in the closing stages of extra time. A third Super Cup title is Bilbao's first silverware since they claimed the same trophy in 2015. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now moving on to the news in more detail. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on the international community to stop India from its reckless and militarist agenda before it pushes the region into an irrepressible conflict. In a series of tweets, Khan said the Indian media has also revealed its government's dirty nexus that is pushing the region towards a conflict. He said Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government continues to turn India into a rogue state. The Prime Minister said Indian-sponsored terrorism in Pakistan, its abuses in Kashmir, as well as the EU Disinfo Lab revelations have exposed India. Khan said he had already spoken at the UN General Assembly on how Modi's government used the Balakot crisis for an election win. He pledged to continue to expose Modi's fascist regime and India's belligerent designs against Pakistan. And Pakistan says India is playing the role of a spoiler in the ongoing Afghan peace process. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Pakistan has taken up the issue with the Afghan administration. Qureshi said India's actions seek to create instability in the entire region. While addressing a meeting, the minister said the British parliamentarians have cleared that Kashmir is an international dispute. The foreign minister said Indian rulers' nexus with its media has unearthed the sinister design of the country against Pakistan. He added due to the government's efforts, the international community's stance on the Kashmir issue is changing. Moving on, Taliban chief Mullah Baradar Akund has assured the United Nations of its full cooperation regarding the vaccination process in Afghanistan. Mullah Baradar, along with his delegation, met with the heads of the UN, WHO, and UNICEF for Asia. A Taliban spokesperson said the two sides discussed vaccines, treatment for corona, and other infectious diseases, including polio, in Afghanistan. He said the Taliban consider it their responsibility to provide health services to the people of Afghanistan. The world has called for immediate release of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, who was detained on arrival in Moscow. It was the first time Navalny has been back home from Germany since he was poisoned last summer. European Council President Charles Michel said the detainment of Alexei Navalny is unacceptable. Italy, France, Poland, and other European countries have also called for the urgent release of the Kremlin critic. U.S. President-elect Joe Biden's top aide, Jake Sullivan, said the perpetrators of the attack on his life must be held accountable. Earlier, the Russian capital's prison service said it would do everything to arrest Navalny once he returned. They accused him of breaching the terms of a suspended prison sentence for fraud and can be jailed for up to 3.5 years. 3 people, including 2 children, have been injured in a Houthi missile attack on Saudi Arabia's southwestern Jazan city. The Jazan's Civil Defense Directorate says the projectile was fired towards one of the border villages in Al Arda Governorate. It said the missile also caused damage to a civilian vehicle near the site. The directorate added that the city's civil defense teams were immediately dispatched towards the scene. Earlier, the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen said it intercepted 3 bomb-laden drones launched by the Houthis towards the kingdom. Moving on, Iran's Foreign Minister Jawad Zarif has denounced the American bombers patrolling the Middle East. He warned the U.S. president that Tehran has not started a war in over 200 years, but it won't shy from crushing aggressors. In his tweet, Zarif said the U.S. should spend those billions of dollars on its taxpayers' health instead of trying to intimidate Iran. Earlier, the U.S. Central Command announced that B-52 bomber aircraft had conducted a patrol in the Middle East. 2 U.S. B-52s were also spotted in Israeli airspace heading towards the Persian Gulf. Now, Iran's central bank has criticized the European Union's payment channel designed to allow European companies to avoid U.S. sanctions. In a tweet, the bank portrayed the instrument in support of trade exchanges as useless, saying its operations are under the influence of sanctions. It said the UK, France, and Germany do not have the courage to maintain their economic sovereignty. The bank said Iran will not divert its resources to Instex anymore, as the European states have no idea how to finance the channel. This came after Germany blamed Iran for the failure of the EU-initiated payment system. The Instex mechanism was set up by France, Germany, and Britain in January 2019 to facilitate trade with Iran by avoiding U.S. sanctions. Now, rescuers say 12 miners trapped underground after an explosion in a Chinese gold mine a week ago are still alive. State media said the workers managed to send a note to rescuers 7 days after the accident in eastern Shandong province. The note said 12 people were alive in the middle section of the mine, while the fate of 10 others was still unclear. According to state media, the rescuers made contact with some of the miners through a narrow shaft. Rescue teams were drilling several rescue shafts in the hope the workers can be evacuated. They sent food, medicine, paper, and pencils into the hole after they felt pulling on the ropes they lowered into the mine. The explosion damaged the exit and communication system of the mine, which was still under construction. And South Korean President Moon Jae-in says U.S. President-elect Joe Biden should resume talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In a news conference, Moon said Biden's inauguration will provide a turning point to restart the stalled talks. He said Seoul will seek an early chance to promote Pyongyang as Biden's foreign policy priority. Moon added talks can pick up pace if they follow through on an agreement reached by Trump and Kim at Singapore summit. The two leaders vowed to establish new relations and work towards denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. But their second summit and ensuing working-level talks fell apart.
The inauguration of the Biden administration would provide a turning point to newly start the U.S.-North Korea dialogue, the South-North dialogue, to inherit the achievements that were made under the Trump administration.
Moving on, small groups of protesters, some of whom were armed, gathered at state houses across the U.S. Many state houses remained quiet amid a ramping up of security across U.S. legislatures. Protests were held outside Capitol buildings in Texas, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio, and elsewhere, but no clashes were reported. Many cities prepared for violent protests over the weekend, erecting barriers and deploying thousands of National Guard troops. The deployments came amid FBI warnings of armed protests ahead of Wednesday's inauguration. Talking to the media, Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said all Guard members were also being vetted due to fears of an insider threat. The number of global coronavirus infections has crossed 95 million, with over 2 million deaths. The U.S.'s COVID-19 death tally is approaching 400,000, while its caseload is nearing 24 million. More on the pandemic in the following report.
The cases, hospitalizations, and deaths from the coronavirus have reached record highs as the world endures its darkest chapter of the pandemic yet. In the U.S., nearly 1 year since the first known coronavirus case was detected, the full extent of the nation's failure against the virus have come into clear view. The uncertainty over the availability of the vaccine's second doses keep building in the country, while the officials downplay the speculations as misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Brazil has approved Oxford's AstraZeneca and China's Sinovac vaccines amid doubts over the efficacy of the Russian Sputnik. Venezuela has sent a convoy of trucks carrying emergency oxygen supplies for Brazil's northern Amazon state, where second wave has hit hard.
The convoy going to Brazil in solidarity with the people of Amazonas is made up of 6 trucks with a total of 136,000 liters of oxygen, equivalent to 14,000 individual canisters. Early in the morning, we will be crossing La Linea, the border with Brazil, at the Santa Helena de Uairen customs to deliver the cargo to Brazilian health authorities and to continue towards Manaus, where it is estimated it may arrive 14 hours later.
Over in Europe, all UK travel corridors which allow arrivals from some countries to avoid having to quarantine have now closed till February 15. Dutch riot police used water cannons to try to disperse protesters against national lockdown, which attracted thousands of people to central Amsterdam. In Spain, nursing homes residents are among the first people to receive the second dose of the BioNTech Pfizer coronavirus vaccines. Meanwhile, cases continue to rise in China as well, where authorities say most of the cases are imported.
At present, there are mainly 2 regions where the epidemic situation is relatively serious. One is Hubei province, with the cities of Xizangtiang and Xintai as the epicenters. The number of corona cases is still increasing at the moment there. The other is Northeast China province, especially the province of Heilongjiang, where Xihua city is the epicenter. In addition, there are small clusters of cases in the other places which were caused by other traveling out of those 2 regions.
Australia's New South Wales has urged the residents to get tested after 6 new cases of community transmission were recorded in the state. India has reported 447 cases of adverse event following immunization and 3 hospitalizations a day after it kicked off its vaccination drive.
Whereas in Pakistan, 46 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 10,997. Health officials reported 1,920 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, more than 34,000 active COVID-19 cases have been detected in the country. The health ministry says out of over 521,000 countrywide cases, more than 475,000 people have recovered. Meanwhile, students headed for schools after almost a year today, as institutions recommenced in class presence for grades 9 through 12. Moving on, Pakistan's Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Mujahid Anwar Khan, says India is sponsoring terrorism to destabilize Pakistan. Speaking in Ankara, he said New Delhi has repeatedly rejected Islamabad's peace gestures. The air chief said the plight of Kashmiris remains a big question mark for the international community. The air chief marshal also said Pakistan fully supports Turkey on regional issues, including its war against terrorism. And we'll be back with more news after a short break. Stick around. We're back. A state of emergency has been declared in Sudan's West Darfur state as the death toll in ethnic clashes rises to 83. In a statement, medics said the number of wounded people has also risen to 160 in two-day clashes between Arab and non-Arab militias. Sudan's Sovereign Council has announced to send security reinforcements to the state to protect citizens and vital utilities there. Meanwhile, around-the-clock curfew is also imposed in the state after the deadliest violence since a peace agreement was signed in October. After the peace agreement, the joint UN-African Union peacekeeping mission started to withdraw its staff from the country. Now in Indonesia, the death toll from the strong earthquake and floods in the central parts of Indonesia has risen to 96. The quake has displaced nearly 70,000 people who were forced to flee home and take shelter. Disaster Mitigation Agency's spokesman said more than 250 others have been seriously injured after the 6.2 magnitude quake. Meanwhile, in South Kalimantan province, at least 15 people have died following weeks of torrential rains and flash flooding. The world's fourth most populous country also suffered a plane crash on January 9th that killed 62 people. On top of that, a deadly landslide in Java has killed 29 people after the Merapi and Semeru volcanoes erupted. And rock music producer Phil Spector has died at age 81 after contracting COVID-19. Spector was serving a 19-year prison sentence for the murder of Hollywood actress Lana Clarkson in 2003. As per media reports, Spector was diagnosed with COVID-19 4 weeks ago and was transferred from his prison cell to a hospital. Spector changed the sound of pop music in the 1960s with his Wall of Sound recordings. He produced 20 top 40 hits between 1961 and 1965 and went on to work with the Beatles, the Righteous Brothers, and Tina Turner. He also influenced artists ranging from the Beach Boys to Bruce Springsteen. In the Chinese city of Shenyang, 4 pandas have been spotted playing with balls, rolling on snow, and climbing snow-wrapped tree trunks. More in this report.
In China, an interesting and vivid scene has been presented as giant pandas were spotted playing in the snow-blanked zoo. The pandas were released into the snow field for enjoying the fresh air at the Shenyang Forest Wild Animal Zoo.
We prevent them from staying indoor for too long. When playing outside, they can breathe the fresh air, have contact with different smells, and enjoy a wider space for activities. So we let them get outside when there is enough sunlight in the afternoon. Especially after snowfalls, they would be so excited playing in the snow.
Since the pandas will consume more energy when playing games in the snow, the zoo workers have prepared nutritional bamboo poles and bamboo shoots for them. In addition, they have also installed underfloor heating facilities and air humidity control devices to create a warm environment for the pandas.
We have installed an underfloor heating system to keep the indoor temperature at around 15 degrees Celsius. To avoid the air becoming too dry due to the heating facilities, we would place some water and regularly spray water in the indoor sports field and their rooms to keep the air humidity at a comfortable level.
A zoo worker says outdoor activities are good for the health of pandas.
On to business. China's latest official figures have confirmed it was the only major economy to see growth in the pandemic-hit year 2020. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows a fourth quarter growth of 6.5% from a year earlier. The GDP growth beat forecasts of 6.1%, following a 4.9% expansion in the third quarter. According to NBS data, the world's second-largest economy grew by 2.3% in COVID-stricken 2020. Beijing's industrial output also rose at a faster-than-expected rate of 7.3% in December from a year ago. It expanded for the ninth straight month as the vast manufacturing sector continues its post-COVID recovery. December's retail sales also edged up 4.6% from a year earlier, missing forecast for 5.5% growth. And now stocks in Asia Pacific are trading mixed as investors react to December's Chinese growth data and COVID-19 development. South Korean stocks have tumbled, with Seoul's Kospi slipping nearly 2% to lead the losses. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 and the Topix index have also shed almost 1%. Shares in Australia also shed, with the ASX 200 sliding over 0.5%. But mainland Chinese shares in Hong Kong's Hang Seng have gained almost 1%. It's now time to take a look at the latest weather updates from around the world. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.